Legalizing marijuana in the United States of America may appear to be a progressive move, but the question is it really? We all just came through the crack epidemic, you know about that, especially if you were 80s and 90s baby, and now we're in 2024. And this is the one question that many of us have. What is going to be the social impact? What is going to be the economic impact? And what is going to be the health risks that are associated with legalizing marijuana in this country? Did we think about it? Did our leaders think about it? And with other countries who decide not to legalize marijuana, and they're going to be making sure that their youth and those who take the torch to follow through on their countries to be the next leaders and to be the next think tank, what are American children going to be doing? What are American youth going to be doing? Oh, sure, they always have the few that they save, but what about the many? This and more coming up on the Critical Line Network, where insight meets analysis, and where I am your host, Abike. Stay tuned, and we'll discuss it. Be right back. So, as you know, our leaders across the states and governors and the White House and has legalized marijuana in the different states. But I really want to share something with you. A lot of the younger generation did not experience the crack move, but we who were 80 babies, 90 babies, and own up. Even though we may have never done crack, we experience in these communities the effects of cracks. We experience the implications and what toll it had on family members and people that it didn't miss. And the reason why I thought this topic was very intriguing to me, because as I was digging through research, I want to bring research to you. I don't want to just talk to you. So I'm going to be reading some stuff off to you because you need to understand, I don't think that we as a nation think this through. Sometimes we as people want what we want, but is it good for the better whole? Is it good for everyone? And I'm going to share some stories with you, but I want to share some facts with you because a lot of times we're not looking at the facts or the truth of what our choices make sometimes. So, number one, I want to start off with this. We have 195 to 206 countries in the world. I want you to hear that. 195 to 206 countries in the world. Now, you're also dealing with continents and different other aspects, right? And I want you to consider something. Continents, about 7 continents, which are Africa, Antarctica, Asia, Europe, North America, Australia, and South America. But I want you to take something into consideration. There are many countries who have not made the decision to legalize marijuana, and I personally think for good reason. We all know that if you really pay attention, when we look at our superstars, when we look at everything in our country, our parents, our family members, or whoever who may have ever been affected by drugs, the one commonality that we all know is that they never started out with the hardcore drug. We know that. We know that. They just didn't. But they did start out with alcohol and marijuana. That's why marijuana is called the gateway drug. It's called the gateway drug for a reason because it opens up the, I guess you can say, the realm for other things to be introduced to you. You understand that if I can get you to do marijuana, I can get you maybe to do something else, and I can get you to do something else, and I can get you to try this, and I can get you to try that, but not considering the consequences of how it's going to really, really take a toll on your life and affect you. And I think during the crack epidemic, it was so brutal in America. I think that people learned some lessons from that. I don't think they learned everything, but I think they learned some things from that. Now, the reason why I want to bring facts to you before I bring stories is because you need to understand that when we don't look at, we tend to forget. You know how when we go through something in life and then we forget about what we went through, and then we be like, God, how did I find myself in this situation all over again? The freak, because we forget, don't we? We forget how hard it was. We forget how we suffered. We forget what we went through. We forget. We get hoodwinkled all over again. And then we have to go learn that lesson all over again, right? So anybody from all these different people like Whitney Houston and all of our favorite people, and uh, anybody from Amy Weinstein to all these different people that people love and adore, to your family members and cousins and all these people, we forget that when they suffered from addiction and hardcore drugs, that they never started out that way. They always started out with the gateway drug, and that drug is marijuana. So the reason why I wanted to touch on this topic, because I want you to really, really look at the facts, right? I don't want you to look at what I'm just saying from the stories that I'm going to share with you, from the experiences that I've seen we as Americans go through from the 80s to the 90s up until now, what people are dealing with. The reason why I want to show you experts and facts is because you need to understand that when people do this research, they're not just doing it to twiddle their fingers. They're doing it because they understand that something is wrong. So I'm going to start out with a few facts. So I want you to bear with me because I am going to be reading from some things. So just bear with me. So these are facts to support why marijuana should not be legalized. Addiction and mental health issues. Now, first, let's just start off, y'all. We already know that this country is dealing with the bouts of what they call mental health issues. We know it's spiritual. For us who are spiritual, we understand it's spiritual warfare. We understand all of that. But the world talks in terminology. And in that terminology, it is translated as mental health issues. So why are you going to go put a substance on top of that that's not going to cure it, but by the time I give you these facts, it's going to make you help you realize, and by the time I remind you and share some stories with you, it's going to help you realize that maybe legalizing marijuana may not be the answer. So number one, health risk. Addiction and mental health issues. According to the National Institute on Drugs, NIDA, you can go look this up yourself, 30% of marijuana users may develop a marijuana use disorder. We know it's more than that, but hey. People who began using marijuana before the age of 18 are 4 times more likely than adults to develop a marijuana disorder. Again, you have to think about people upcoming. You just can't think about your choices and yourself. And we are going to get to decriminalizing marijuana and the importance of that, because you have to separate the two. You want to decriminalize how people have been done in the injustice system concerning marijuana, but also you want to make sure that you're making right choices when it comes to marijuana. Now, a study was published with JAMA, I'm saying JAMA, but it's JAMA Psychiatry, found that individuals who use marijuana have increased risk of developing psychiatric disorders. Y'all better come on and listen to me now. If we're already dealing with psychiatric issues in our country, and this country, more than any other countries, deal with mental health issues and have been prescribed meds more than any other country, again, why do we think that this is the choice? Including psychosis, such as schizophrenia, and especially frequent use of, I guess you can say, cognitive dysfunction is what they call it. Now, it says impaired cognitive function. Research published in the National, now bear with me, Neuropsychopharmacology is how it's pronounced, shows that long-term marijuana use can lead to impaired cognitive function, affecting your memory, attention, and executive functions. Mm. Now you say, no, we don't do all that. We don't do all that. God made weed. That's the argument, right? Yes, sweetheart. And cockroaches are made, and ants are made, and mosquitoes are made, and birds are made, and plants are made, and all kind of stuff is made. It don't mean that we consume it, and it doesn't mean that it's for our consumption. Even the coca plant is made, but it don't mean that we're supposed to extract it, put substances in it, and then smoke it or shoot it. That's not how God made us. I'm gonna say it flat out right. I don't care what other people tell you. I don't care how they tell you. I don't care what your arguments is. That's not how God made us. You know it. I know it. You can argue till your little toes fall off, but you know the truth. Okay? And you also know that if you go outside and you take a plant and you just roll it up and smoke it, you is not gonna get high, fall all over the place. You not gonna be running around losing your memory. We know that. So we know that when these substances are extracted, that they're altered. We can smell it. Like when people are smoking it, we know that they don't smell like weed that our cousins and them used to smoke, even though we knew that wasn't good either. But we can smell that thing in it that they says that's med. Oh no, you can smell that. And it smells horrible. It smells like a suppression and a compression. And so no wonder people are up under compression and suppression. Let's get back to the facts. A study in the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences found that adolescents who use marijuana regularly lost an average of 8 IQ points. 8 IQ points. They only have so many on the scale between the ages of 13 and 38. And these deficits were not fully restored even after the individual stops smoking marijuana. Let's get to physical health concerns. The American Lung Association states that marijuana smoke contains many of the same harmful chemical elements as tobacco smoke, which can damage the lungs and lead to respiratory issues. We all know that people be smoking. I mean, we all know the game, y'all. We grew up in it. We know the game. For those who do, we know. Hold up, dude. We all know the games. We know the game, y'all. Also, a study published in the journal Circulation indicated that marijuana use is associated and significantly increased risk with mitochondrial infarction. Y'all, I can't pronounce it. I'm not going to lie. But mitochondrial infarction, which means heart attacks, basically, in young adults. So we're talking about strokes and heart attacks. And I'm going to share a story with you on that too. Let's get to public safety. Impaired driving. It impairs your motor coordination and functions, judgment, reaction at times, all of that. We've all been there. We've been in the car with somebody smoking weed. We'd be like, hey, dude, straighten up. Pay attention, We've been there. The reason why I express it that way, because we need to get back to the real. Also, increased crime rates. There is a lot of crime going on. So even though we want to decriminalize how, I think I'm saying it right, but anyway, we want to make sure that people who have gotten caught with marijuana or things have happened with marijuana, we want to make sure that those people are not so criminalized that you just take their whole life away, 10 and 15 years, because they was caught with a joint. And that's important that we don't do that to people. But it's also important that we understand that you don't legalize it just because you want to fix the problem. The problem wasn't the weed. The problem was jealousy and hatred and locking up a people out of competition and getting rid of them and using the marijuana as an excuse to do it. That was the problem. You don't lock people up for 10 years for a joint. I mean, it's just that simple. So we fix the problem, but that doesn't mean we bring on other problems by legalizing it. Let's get to social impact. I'm trying to go through these fast because I know people get bored with statistics. So, but stick with me because you need to see these things. You need to hear these things. Social impact, youth exposure, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA is the acronym, is reported that in states where recreational marijuana is legal, there has been an increase in marijuana amongst adolescents where they've made it legal. The American Academy of Pediatrics warns that marijuana, now they warning you, that marijuana use during adolescence can impair brain development, leading to long-term cognitive and emotional issues. Normalization of drug use. A study published in the International Journey of Drug Policy found that marijuana legalization can lead to the normalization of drug use, potentially increasing the use of other illicit substances. That's why they call it the gateway drug. Nobody ever started out with heroin, crack, any other substance. Marijuana, give you a little bit of marijuana. The enemies tempt you. If I can do in marijuana, I can give you something else. It's just like a dude when you go on a date. If I can touch your leg and kiss your neck, and you're getting a little frisky, I might can do something else. It's give you the inch and you take a mile type of mentality, right? So when people start out getting you on drugs or whoever introduces you to drugs, they don't start with a hardcore drug. That's very, very rare. Marijuana has always been the gateway. Now, let's get to economic concerns, regulation and enforcement costs. Now, a lot of people say all these tax things, this is going to make us taxes, this is going to do this, but this is not what people are considering. According to the report by the Centennial Institute at Colorado Christian University and the Society Costs of Marijuana Legalization, including healthcare, legal, and regulatory expenses, it will outweigh, let's say that again, y'all, the cost of marijuana legalization, including healthcare, because there's going to be a lot of health issues, including legal. There are going to be legal fees for things going on, people doing things wrong, and regulatory expenses will outweigh the tax revenue that will be generated from marijuana sales. Okay? The RAND Corporation, RAND, highlights that effective regulation and enforcement of legalized marijuana require significant financial resources, which may be challenging for many states to manage. And all of that is going to outweigh the taxes that you're going to generate. Because after all, who's going to pay the taxes? You are. And who's also going to pay the taxes of healthcare and all these different legal actions, all this stuff going on, when people have to get free legal care and health care and all this stuff. Okay. The impact on the workforce. Now, this is the one that's most important to me because this is the one I bear witness to. And a lot of them I do because I've seen them throughout our lifetime. But this is important because you have the younger generation coming up and you have people who have their jobs now. And even though things seem like they legalize, if you have this in your system and you go take a drug test, do they bring you on or do they deny you? So again, how are you going to compete not only on a national level, but on a economic and social level when it comes to other countries on an international level if you're legalizing this and other countries are not, and no one wants to hire you because you have this in your system. So people, these are things we have to think about. I know as humans we want what we want, But just because we want everything, it don't mean that it's for the better whole. And I would really, since this is a platform of more healing and more of understanding and more perspectives, it's not about judging each other and trying to tear each other down. Now, I deal with some battles, I deal with people be like, B, we can't stand you, or different people that don't like you because you're trying to get people to see the bigger picture. Because remember, we forgot about the crack epidemic, didn't we? But the crack epidemic did not start with crack. It started with marijuana and alcohol. And people losing their livers and people losing their kidneys and, great uncles and papas. And, it kind of started with all of that. And then you numb the people down and you introduce them to more and more things. And we tend to forget. We forget what we've been through. And when things going good and appear to be going good, the enemy slips right back in another kind of form. The enemy make us think we're doing this for you, but is it for us? And is it going to affect us as a whole? There's a scripture that I think is so important. There is a way that seems right unto man, but the end thereof is death, is destruction. Because we don't count up the cost. We forget. We go through a bad relationship with a guy. We finally get out the relationship. God ain't going through that no more. I'm on my P's and Q's and bloopity bloopity bloop and get right back into the situation again. And be like, God, how in the heck did I get here? And it's the same way with some of the choices that not only we make as humans, but our country is making that affect us as a whole. Okay? So I just wanted to point out some of those facts to you to help you to understand that number one, not only do you have 195 countries, 206 at the most, according to data, and your 7 continents. But if you look at the real true facts, the major companies, not companies, but the major countries are not legalizing this stuff. And we're a major country and we're legalizing it. We're already knocking ourselves out the battle. We already doing ourselves an injustice. And I just wanted to point those facts out because, guys, I don't think we consider the bigger picture or consider the bigger whole and what effect it's going to have on generations. You're not the only one here. You're responsible for you, but you're also responsible for what you leave to the next generation. Now I want to share some stories with you. I don't want to make this a long, broadcast or anything like that, but I just want to bring back and jog our memory. Remember when our family members and stuff would get high and they'll lay around on the couch and they be chilling and impaired and you'll be like, if you don't get your butt up and go to work, or whatever it was, or they lay in bed all day, weed make you lazy. It do. It make you lazy. And if you already deal with a lazy disposition and you're not a go-getter, like some people are just go-getters naturally. So weed slows them down, but it don't slow them down. But for people who are just naturally like oppressed and naturally lazy, weed is not going to be good for you because it's going to make it even worse. Some things make things worse. It don't make it better. And remember, like, during the age of drugs, how people would mix primos. Y'all remember that? They put the little stuff in there and they mix it with some weed. You don't think people are going to be mixing these drugs up today, giving this stuff to people? And people say, well, no, we're talking about the legalization of medical marijuana. Have you smelled weed that your granny and them used to smoke versus medical marijuana? Have you smelled it? Those are two totally different smells, y'all. One smells like death, and one smelled like another type of substance. Like it didn't smell like what it smelled like back then. And I want to share something with you. I was in California for some years of my life, and when I saw that they had legalized this, one of the things I saw is that people were smoking it on trains, even in Dallas and all these different cities. They would smoke it here, they would smoke it there. And I'm like, People got to bring their children on the trains. People got to bring their family members on the trains. And they have to be exposed to all of that. It's one thing. You remember how when we grew up, the older people that were older than us when we were younger, they would tell us stuff like, y'all get out of our business and go out there and play. Get out of grown folks' business. And they would do things, privately amongst each themselves. They would never expose it to the children or smoke it in front of the children. You remember that, right? But see, in today's society, a lot of morals and principles have been lost. They put it in the kids' hands with a diaper on and say twerk with it and twirl with it. So that means that these children are not going to have a chance. They're not going to be able to make their own decisions because they're going to be exposed to it. It's going to be normalized. And once you normalize a society to be sedated, because that's really what's happening, you're being sedated, then how do you compete economically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually for good jobs, for good health, for good anything when you're sedated and when your generations are sedated? Because we all know that it's a sedative. We don't make you hyper. Like if you're just a naturally hyper person, you may get a little bit more hyped and amped because your senses don't went up. But that's really not what we do. Weed, that's why people always tell you, you need to smoke some weed, you need to relax, you know. But I truly believe that it's not the answer. And I do believe that we need to solve where they did, especially Black people, injustice in this country and locked up so many people for years of just toting weed and toting this and, and getting those people addicted in the first place. So I do believe that you need to resolve that, and bring justice to that. But that doesn't mean that you go legalize it. Because when you legalize it, now you're normalizing it. And when you normalize it, if it didn't fix the problems then, what makes you think it's going to fix the problems now? So it's my hope that leaders would rethink and sometimes don't look at what we want to do and think that we have all the answers. Sometimes study other countries. Why do they think the way they think? Why do they make the choices they make? Not always because they be in such an oppressive society. Sometimes they just understand what you've always known. That's why you always said no for so many years. They understand that there are consequences to this game. And let's not destroy the people and destroy the generations. Let's tell people no. Do what you do in the privacy of your home if that's your choice. But we cannot do this because we have to consider the whole. You're not the only one. Remember what they used to tell us back in the day when we were kids and stuff? You're not the only one in this house. There's other people live here. Straighten your tail up. Well, you're not the only one in this America. There's other people live here. Straighten your tail up. There's generations coming behind us. You got to think economically. You got to think compete wise. I don't mean compete knocking people, harming people. I just mean if you got people in Africa and all these countries, and these young people are intelligent and talking brilliant. Have you ever heard these young people? Young adults? These people are more brilliant than half of us adults are. But if you're getting our American children high, if you're teaching them that it's okay and it's normal, then baby, they're not going to have a chance. They're going to think you just live it up. You just have a career where you make fast money and you just get high. But the other countries are going to be knocking this country out the box. You're going to believe that the only way you can conquer is by war and murder. And they're going to believe that the way that they conquer is by intelligence and brilliance and bright ideas, which is who we are. And that's who we need to get back to. And when are we going to learn that? And when are we going to learn that we are brilliant, we are bright? Man, we are some gifted, talented people. But we have to make some gifted, talented, important decisions, that help us be that and continue to stay that. And so sometimes it's good to look at what other countries doing and to say, hey, there's a reason why they're not doing it and don't want to do it. Sometimes we can take advice from other people. Sometimes we don't have all the answers, Sometimes Big Mama on the porch was right, not the expert at the top of the ladder, So I just hope that you really understand why I made this video, why I brought those facts the way that I needed to bring them, because I think we forget. We forget what it does when we do things like this and how it brings and ushers in more darkness. We think we fixing the problem. You fix the problem. That's why you got to get to the root of stuff. That's why I say stop picking with the cherries on the cake and go on and deal with the cake. The problem was never the marijuana or the weed when they locked up all those people like that. The problem was jealousy and hatred. The marijuana and the weed was just an excuse to come after them. Because you get them addicted, then you can come after them. Then you can lock them up. So to me, systemic issues is legalizing this mess, because now you're going to open that door all over again. It may appear like everything going good for a while. You know how it is. There is a way that seems right unto man, but the end thereof is death or destruction. So I think that as people, we need to bring ideas, as think tank people, bring solutions to what can we do for the American. Listen, let me give you something. When you get through smoking that weed, that problem gonna still be there. When you get through smoking that weed, that pain gonna still be there. When you get through, it's gonna still be there. It's not gonna solve the problem. It's just gonna make you an addict and addictive to it, and then make you sedative. So my thing is this: why don't the think tanks and the people, instead of thinking of how to make taxes on how to sedate you, think about how to make taxes on how to bring better ideas to you and better solutions to you. Let's heal the American people, not continue to try to do them over. And that's my thought on it. Because we forgot what the crack epidemic done, honey. That was a blow to the communities. That stuff was horrible. It didn't care if you was white, black, Latino. It didn't discriminate. If you got on it, you got messed up. And remember the solutions back then? You had the Nancy Reagan programs, you had the missionaries going into school. Just say no. Just say no. That's what saved some of our butts. That's why we don't touch that stuff right now to this day. And that was back in the 80s. They were trying to think of creative solutions on how to fight it. So they would go into the schools and they would say, just say no. What would you do if your cousin handed to you? Just say no. What would you do if your mama handed to you? Just say no. Like, they were serious, y'all. But for those of us who took heed, it saved us from that era. It really did. A lot of people died from that. Lots of people were locked up. Lots of people died. Lots of people lost family, lost lives. I mean, it was horrible. That's why I said we forget. So remember, this legalization of this stuff that you think that is going to be better and you're going to make taxes off of and money off of, the cost thereof is going to outweigh what you think you're going to get out of it. And in this world of economic force, where people have to work and cope, and they're going to be denying you jobs because you got this stuff in your system. Well, they said it's legalized. Well, it's systemic. You better stop falling for the okie doke. Again, stop looking at them cherries on the top of that cake and start dealing with the core of that cake. It's a trap. I wish you the best. I try to give this as honest as I can because I remember that epidemic. I remember being in them projects. I remember looking all around me as a young girl going to school. I remember growing up. I remember the missionaries who came to our schools to, and when I say missionaries, they wasn't really missionaries. They were people who was doing a lot of research behind closed doors on drugs and the future of America. And they were trying to forewarn, and they was drilling it into us and drilling it into us. They had campaigns after campaigns. They come in every week. So think of initiatives and ideas that make the American people better and not worse. If you can do that, then you're doing God's work. You have a great day.